Welcome everybody to my quick video on best practices in Appery development. This video will focus on debugging issues with service calls. I've actually seen a number of folks who've had problems on the forum with service issues, and it always seems to be a black box to folks on how to debug some of those issues. So I thought I'd do a quick video on how to debug some of those issues. So let's do an example. I'll start up Appery. So I've currently got a page that has some challenges with it. It's a page which is delivering back some information to an administrative user on open tasks for users in our onboarding application. So currently the report works, so we'll look at a working service. However, one of these buttons, which is this button right here to complete the task, mark the task as complete if you're an administrator, is not working. We'll debug that. First, a quick introduction. This is me, Bruce Stewart. Here's our contact information. Our agenda is we're going to look at a working service on that page. We're going to debug a service on that same page that doesn't work, and then I'm going to thank you and send you on your way. So we'll now start Appery. Click our test button. An app will come up. We'll log in with the last credentials I used, and we'll come to our landing page for our onboarding app. We'll take the user over to the setup page, which is where this page is called from. We'll go to So we've got our menu up. We're going to launch our incomplete tasks window, the one that we're going to have some challenges with. Prior to doing that, let's open the debugger, which is click on the hamburger button here, click More Tools, Developer Tools, and you'll get your developers console coming out. So let's make the selection on that page. So this is the running version of the version over here, this page right here. So on this page, we've got a service that will get the data. So the first things that we're going to show about this page and about that existing service is what does a best practice working service do for me? We'll show you what a best practice working service looks like, what the logging is, what it gives you the ability to do, can understand the order of execution, potentially find issues quickly, and do some error logging. So let's go back to our debugging session, and you can see what our console looks like. We're going to run this report right now just exactly the way it's specified. On clicking the Run button, the service over here called Get Open Tasks is launched. We'll see what comes out in the console, and we'll see how that's accomplished. So I'll click Run, which is going to launch my service. Notice it puts something in the log that says Starting Service Get Open Tasks. It is a reasonably long-running task on the other side. I'm actually kicking off a server script. As it comes back, you can see the data that comes back in the log. So good information to have in the log is when it's starting. A lot of times we also like to log what the where clause is. So we've logged that here. User clause for that's being used, that's being passed over the service is this one right here. And then when it's done, it gives us a service complete, a success message. And then also when it's complete, it gives you a success message. Now we'll look at some quick best practices that help accomplish that. Prior to starting any one of your services, you should basically tell the system to log into the console and put in it a separate JavaScript, right, by saying console logging the service start message. We actually like to, and it's not conformant to our own policy, we'll actually like to put a bracket around that and let people know what's happening. Then, of course, you have your mapping, which is pretty standard, and almost everybody includes something over here. On the success side, it does a mapping. The other interesting thing that we do here is on success, we also log it out so that you'll see that was an error in the log. And then also, we always have something that will capture an error in the service. So noted, look, we have something that spits out to the log, and then also some expanded logic that we have. So we have a standard log function that we use for anything that errors, and we pass it the parameters that come in, as well as a message, as well as the service itself, and a parameter that tells whether to do verbose logging or not. So more on that later, and then we also put something out to the log. We'll go specifically into our mapping really quick. So in our mapping, we're calling pretty much the standard stuff. So that's some quick information on the way a page that's working and best practices around logging. If anything were to break on that page, we could see where it broke and then go dig in on why it broke by our error logging and or stuff that was coming out in the console. So let's look at something that's currently broken and not working. Intentionally, I've left something broken on this page. So here's our page with one of the broken services. So what's broken is this button on complete. So if you look over here on my design, I press on complete. I set a storage variable that saves the ID off the report / item off the list. And then I run a service called mark task complete upon clicking that button. Note that I don't have any of our standard logging here or anything like that. So let's see how the application performs without that versus with it. So here we'll press complete and note, well, we don't know whether it succeeded or failed. And the user also has no idea whether it succeeded or failed. If we look at the console, however, so to the average user, it might look like who knows whether they think it failed or succeeded. Look in the console and, oh, cleared the console, so that's not going to help very much, is it? And we've got an error in the background, but really it never told the user. So if you had a service like this that was malperforming, and unless you're watching really carefully, you might not see it if it gets mixed with some other stuff in your log. And if it's in production and has this error, your user, unless you've got some error trapping going on and some other logging, your user will have no idea of what's gone wrong. And if you were to attempt to fix it, you'll have no way to do that. So here's a couple best practices. When your service starts, add some JavaScript to it that notes when it's starting. You'll do that by doing before send, run JavaScript, and then you can put some stuff in the log that helps you understand that the service actually got to start. So I added some logging in here. JS info starting service task mark task complete. Copy it. I'm going to use it elsewhere. And of course, I'm going to move that over to run right before I do my mapping, because if I have any errors in my mapping and my mapping blows up, I want to know that at least this started, and it'll tell me what service was starting, and then I'll find the error in the mapping. That way I know where to go look if this service breaks or if something breaks while the application's running. On my success side, I'll actually put something in as well. And I'll do the same thing. I'll put that in before the mapping so I know that that's happened. So I've set a success script here. Press save. Looks like I may have made a mistake on this one. I did. I'll get rid of that. Fix that so that there's no longer an error in this piece of JavaScript. On the error side, you need to have some JavaScript in there for when the script errors out. So I'll call our generic script for errors, and I'll add some code to the complete event as well. Oops, wrong code. So in this log, when it's complete, I'll actually add something. I will go back and add to my success event one other thing that I believe is necessary. So I've added some information here that the task is complete to the log. I'm also going to log the service request, which is from this parameter. It's the JQXHR. It'll give the status as well in the log. We'll go back to our success event to change the mapping to also log out the data. In this case, that might be extensive, so we'll pass on that. In a lot of cases, you should log out the data, which is this parameter here. I won't bring it into this discussion here. Well, let's do it anyway, just for fun. Okay, so then we'll save this, and then we'll rerun the app, and we'll see how it runs differently, and the logging is differently with this stuff in the log, and how that information can help us quickly get to the bottom of the issue that we're having. So here back on our page, we'll run our report again, and we'll go click on our complete button to mark one of these tasks complete, and we'll note what the differences are. Okay, so first off, let's notice that we actually did get an error come up. We had invalid object ID come up with ID. Oh, that ought to be a hint as to what might be wrong with this service. And then we click OK, and we get a script error as well. We'll see that all of the information on the error actually logs. Okay, so we've got some information in the log that's actually useful to us now. So since we logged out the error object, we can click on the service SQL object. We can open this up, and then we can take a look at what the response was, the response JSON object as well as the response text. Here's the error that came back from the database. Here's the actual object error that came back from the database, which is a code plus the description, all useful. And we've got the actual error object here. So it looks like the object ID we're passing to the service does not have a value because it just passed parentheses ID, which is code for let's go look at our request. So we'll go back to our app and click on the mapping. And lo and behold, the mapping for this service request was not performed. So we can do a quick expand all and go from storage to get most of the other stuff. And we can map all the stuff that needs to be mapped. Okay, we finished our mapping and actually included some JavaScript to mark our task complete, which is done here. Just save. We'll add one thing to our success event. Let our user know that it was successfully marked complete. So in our JavaScript for the complete event, we'll add that. We'll make one other change to demonstrate a best practice. In our first service that's working, we'll actually log the data out to the console and call a function that'll let us debug that. So we'll create a function called ftest for function test, and we'll pass it the data. So now we've called a function called ftest, and we're going to pass it the data. Next thing, we'll create a function in our JavaScript called ftest and call it. So now we've created a quick function called ftest, and data is the inbound. We could actually call it whatever we wanted to. Then we'll rerun our service with a breakpoint set on inside this function. Some applications started. I can use the control P function over here in the debugger window to actually open up any source function I like. I've opened up this one. I'm going to set a breakpoint here on that ftest, which will run when my other service starts to get the data. We'll log back in, go to our page and run our report, and we'll wait for our breakpoint to execute, which should be after the data comes back. So here we are, the data's come back, the service has come back, the screen's formed, and we can actually, if we had a question about what the data actually looked like, there were 705 tasks that came back, and we could actually down here in our console inquire on data, press that, and it will tell us it's an object that has 705 tasks in it because that's what came back from the service. And then there are an array of open tasks that came back as well, and we can inquire on them by clicking on these things and seeing what's actually, so this is part of the data that came back. If we look at our first object, it's for an onboarder, and look, the person's name is Brittany Kane, which is basically what's shown over here on our application. We can find out all the data about that object by just inquiring on it and looking at it right here. So great way to debug errors with your reports or errors with data that's coming up on the screen is to log the data that came back from your service request instead of looking at it. You can debug issues with mappings, et cetera, by looking at actually the data that's actually come back as opposed to the way it's presented on your UI, which is after some interpretation. Now we'll look at our service that was failing before. We'll mark one of these tasks as complete. And we'll mark it complete. And note that task mark complete comes up, which is in our success event. And we've even gotten all of the information from that function back out because we logged it when it came back. Again, best practices. Thanks very much for listening. I hope this helps. Again, this has been Bruce Stewart, and here's my contact information if you have any questions or want to reach out in any way. Thank you very much.